So Ken, you and I have been in and around the marketing world for well over a decade now, and there's this thing about what happens in traditional marketing agencies, marketing firms that you and I both used to do, but we moved away from it. We moved away from the typical agency model because, well, for a lot of reasons, but ultimately it's broken and it doesn't necessarily serve clients as well as it ought to.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is when you sell a certain thing, you solve all the problems through that tool. So if we were to go to Home Depot and I were to say, look, you get 3 tools and you need to build something and you only have these 3 tools, you're going to find a way to solve whatever problem you come across with those 3 tools. And that's the problem, in my estimation, with the average marketing agency or the traditional marketing agency, is they have a suite of things that they do, a specific...
So for example, search engine optimization, or they run Facebook ads, or whatever it is that they specialize in.
Exactly, branding, right? Whatever it happens to be. And so they're saying, oh, you have a problem? Well, we can solve your problem. And they see everything through the lens of the skill set that they have.
The thing they do.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly. And that's, in my opinion, what leads to this issue of bad marketing leading to business failure.
Yeah.
Is that because, and I'm guilty of this, right? I came out of a large 650-man agency, right? I saw all problems as, for a long time, being able to be solved by, well, a new website, or better AdWords, or better SEO, or better social media. And the real problem was not that those were the wrong strategies, right? The real problem was they just weren't being implemented correctly. And what I didn't realize was those are actually tactics, not strategies.
Yeah.
And there was no real strategic thinking that went on because, again, I had a hammer and I was going to turn everything into a nail.
So when you end up doing that, and you sort of put the square peg into the round hole for any client who comes along, you specialize in this one thing. We do AdWords, right?
Yep.
No matter whether it's appropriate or not. Some people are going to be the right fit and succeed, and others are not, and they're just wasting their marketing dollars.
Right.
And waste is something that I think really drove us away from that traditional model, is that there's so much waste in the way that traditional marketing is approached.
Yeah, and I think it's even more than just the volume of waste. It's the amount of time that's wasted. It's the amount of effort that's wasted, and it's the lack of predictability, because you never know when something's going to be wasted. Because ultimately, I think what you're doing is you're relying upon the client to know enough to make a good buying decision.
Yeah.
Right? And this would be like me coming to you and saying, hey, David, here's 18 ETFs. I need you to choose the 3 that are right for you.
Of course. Right. No brainer, right?
You're going to say, well, I'm gonna guess that one. But it's a guess. And it might be a semi-educated guess. It might be a non-educated guess. But ultimately, it's a guess, and the difference between you and an expert is they're not guessing.
So what typically would happen, at least for me in my business, was somebody would come to me and they would say, hey, David, I want help running Facebook ads. I know that you were really good at that. And I would say, okay, well, tell me, what are we trying to get people to do? Where's the Facebook ad going? Oh, I want them to go to my website. Great. What happens when they get to the website? Well, then they'll see me and they'll know what I do. And so there was a lack of a thorough plan. There was a lack of an understanding of the entire marketing process. And as I just kept repeating this same sort of scenario with anybody who came to me over and over, I realized, well, this is broken. I got to do something better. I got to do something that is strategic and systematic.
Yeah.
And that's when you and I sort of bonded over this idea.
Yeah. I think that for me, it was very similar. It was, well, we're going to solve your problem with this tool and this tool and this tool. And I hope that what you have in place is good enough to work. And it wasn't until we really started working together that we could step back and say, is this the right tool? How does this tool really work? And what are the necessary preconditions for this tool to be successful, right? AdWords can be incredibly successful as long as you have a stellar landing page, a stellar offer, a really clear call to action, really good follow-up, right? And you have the right funnel built, fundamentally, right? If you've got all those things, sling those AdWords, right? And whoever's running them is likely to see success. Not because they're great at AdWords, but because you have the right system in place to make AdWords work.
Yeah. So years ago, I started studying sort of the typical direct response copywriting. I loved it. I was promoting classical music back at the time, and I was like, oh, this is fascinating. How can we get people to buy tickets to concerts using these concepts, right? And it wasn't until you and I started working together that I started to revisit a lot of that and realize that these strategic principles are really at the core of all of that direct response stuff. And you and I one day were sort of talking about how do we maybe adjust what we're offering to people. And I said, well, let me take a look at all these things you used to do. Why don't we use this? And that was really, I think, an aha moment for the two of us to say strategy is really where it's at. This is the core of what every business needs to do when they approach marketing.
Yeah. Is I think for a long time, we did outsourced director of marketing, and we were doing strategy, but the strategy was me walking in and saying, well, here's what I see and here's what my experience dictates. And it wasn't a strategic process, it was, I had an internal mental map that built strategy.
Yeah.
And when we took one of those particular documents that we happened to use and we said, well, this can be the bedrock on which strategy is built. Mm-hmm. Now it can become systematized and we can start to not just have a strategy that exists in our heads, but we can put this on paper in such a way that it's accessible not only for us, but to have a clear discussion with the client to say, does this strategic direction align with who you are? Does it make sense? And if it works, are you happy with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I see this as a really refreshing way for us to represent ourselves. First of all, very few people approach marketing this way and provide the services that we provide. And while it's a little difficult for some potential clients to grasp because they're still hung up on the, well, do you do this tactic or that tactic?
Yep.
And we say, actually, we're pretty agnostic about which approach we use.
Yeah.
We want to figure out what's right for you and what's going to hit that goal that you have in your business.
Yeah.
And so we approach things strategically without any preconception of what we're actually going to do.
Yeah.
Now, that's a fit for some, and it's not a fit for others because there's a lot of work involved.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we know that when you approach things strategically, that's where the success lies.